So, before we start solving equations with natural bases and natural exponents, let's recap what we did on Thursday. So on Thursday, when we looked at natural bases and natural logs, the only thing that's different is the concept that we're using. A natural base is e raised to a power. Natural log is ln with the base of e. So, other than those two things, everything else is still the same. We still use change of base when it's appropriate. We still rewrite, which we'll be doing a lot of today. And we still use the properties of logs. Remember, for the properties of logs, the only difference is, instead of the word log, we have ln. So essentially what we'll be doing today is laying the foundation for solving equations. Tomorrow we'll be doing some of the applications associated with natural logs and natural bases. Thursday is a review day, and then next week, Monday, will be your unit test on all of Chapter 7. Again, Chapter 7 definitely took a while because of spring break and because of the SAT, but this part will finish up before we go into trig. So the next unit after this one will be trig. So, with that, let us go into solving an equation. So when we are solving equations, the primary thing we need to know how to do is to do the rewrite. So for a natural log and a natural base, if you have e to the x power equals y, then the rewrite would be natural log of y equals x. So remember, natural log has an understood base of e. You do not have to write it. It is understood that because that's the only base that a natural log can take. That's the only base a natural log can take. So you don't have to write the natural base. Just show it. All right. So, first two examples are essentially basic use of doing a rewrite. Basic use of doing a rewrite. So, example 1, we got e to the x equals 45. So again, this is basic use of a rewrite. So e is e. That doesn't change anything. X is your exponent. 45 is your y component. So you have your e, you have your x, you have your y. So if we do the rewrite, that gives you natural log of 45 equals x. So remember, natural log, you do not have to put e there. It's understood. If you choose to, that's fine. It's your business. Natural log of 45, it's a calculator issue. Now we'll let the calculator do some work. So let me go ahead and pull my calculator up. Let the calculator do a little bit of work here. So remember, natural log and the natural base are next to the number 4. So natural log 45 gives you 3.8066. Remember, we go to 3 decimal places unless the problem tells us otherwise. So 3.806 and the 6 behind it means 3.807 equals x. That's it, problem over. So, basic rewrite for the natural base. So now let's do a basic rewrite for natural log. For natural log, ln x equals 7 is the same thing as ln base e of x equals 7. So we identify our components. There's your base. There's your y component. There's your x component. So when we do the rewrite, e to the 7 is equal to x. So e to the 7 is simply a calculator problem. So the calculator, seconds, right? 7. $1096.633. So 1096.633. What's the next? Any questions, examples, 1 or 2? All right, so basic rewrites are not an issue. Basic rewrites are not an issue. Now, when the natural log or the natural base has other things around it, then we have to get rid of it. Then we have to move it around. So, for example, 3 and 4, key point to keep in mind. So the e and the natural log must be by themselves before a rewrite. So before we do a rewrite, those elements have to be by themselves. Those are going to be by themselves. Let's start with example 3. We've got 3 e to the 4x minus 12 equals 15. Let's bring the highlighter up here. So e has to be raised to an exponent. So that's e to the 4x. E has to be raised to an exponent, so that's e to the 4x. So that means that part has to be by itself before we can do a rewrite. So that means this 12 and this 3 has to go. 12 and 3 have to go. 12 is simple enough. I'm going to add it to both sides. divide by 3. So you e to the 4x equals 9. So we have to get there before you do a rewrite. Must get there before you do a rewrite. Any questions before we continue? Now let's do the rewrites. There's your base, there's your exponent, there's your number. So your rewrite is natural log of 9 equals 4x. So there are two ways that you can approach the problem at this point, so I'll show you both ways. First way is to take natural log of 9 and throw it in the calculator right now. Natural log of 9, 2.197. And then divide both sides by 4. So natural log of 9, 2.197, divide by 4, you get 0.549. So do it part by part to solve it out. The other way that you can solve that equation is to divide by 4. And then put this whole thing into the calculator, which is perfectly fine if you choose to want to do it that way. So natural log of 9 divided by 4 still gives you 0.549. So does it matter which way you choose to do it? No. Whichever way works better for you, it's fine with me. Question example 3. Again, if you have questions, please be sure to ask or type them in the chat. Or if it's just that easy for you, then I'm proud of it. Let me know I'm doing something good with it. All right, example 4. Same situation. 5 natural log of 6x equals 8. So natural log, ln can't exist by itself. It's got to have something to pair off with it. So that's what the 6x is for. You know, natural log of 6x, so that has to be by itself before we can do a rewrite. So this 5 has to go. So divide by 5. So natural log of 6x equals 8 over 5. Mr. Lowe, that's a decimal. And that's a fraction. And so you can still solve it out. It's just a fraction. It's just a decimal. We'll live. You can still do a rewrite. You can still do a rewrite. Natural log has a base of e, so there's your base, there's your y component, there's your x component. So you can still do a rewrite. E to the 8 over 5 power equals 6x. Any questions before we continue? Yeah, basic rewrite. So now that we have the basic rewrite, let's go ahead and solve it out. So e to the 8 over 5 power gives you 4.953. 4.953 equals 6x. Divide both sides by 6. 0.953 divided by 6 gives you 8.8255. So 0.826. So, just like example 3, you can always choose to work it all the way out and then do the calculator thing at the end. Divide both sides by 6. You still end up with 0.826. So I don't have a preference. I don't care. As long as your work shows what you did, then I don't care which way you solve it. What I will care about is those people who don't show their work. Then I got to give them a 0, and then some of them will get their feelings, and I ain't got time for all that. Questions on examples 3 and 4? Sounds good. So then the last thing with solving the equation happens to deal with, well, what if properties of logs come into play? Because they will come into play. So, quick reminder about properties of logs. Get my screen here. Can't see it, catch itself up. So remember, there are 3 main properties of logarithms. If you have a natural log of 2 things being multiplied, then you separate it using addition. If you have 2 things being divided, then you separate it using subtraction. And if you have something raised to an exponent, you take the exponent and you kick it to the front. So you have 3 properties of exponents. I mean, not exponents, logarithms. Which one you use depends on the problem presented to you. Which one you use depends on the problem. So, in the case of example 5, You have natural log x plus 5 squared equals 6. Key thing here, you've got an exponent. You've got an exponent sitting in the problem. Since you have an exponent sitting in the problem, we're going to kick it to the front. We're going to move the exponent to the front. So 2 times natural log x plus 5 equals 6. We'll kick it to the front. Just like last time, we can't do a rewrite until the natural log is by itself. So the 2 has to go. So natural log x plus 5 equals 3. Any questions before we carry on with example 5? All right, let's carry on with the rewriting. Natural log has a base of e. That's your y component. That's your x component. Here, e to the third power equals x plus 5. So this becomes a relatively easy calculator problem. E to the third power is 20.086. Subtract your 5, 15.086 equals x. So again, it's not an overtly difficult problem. Any questions with 5 before we finish up with number 6? All right, problem 6. So you got natural log of 3x plus natural log of 2x equals 9. Problem here is very, very simple. You cannot have 2 logs. 2 logs, 2 natural logs, same difference. You can't have 2 of them. We need to get rid of them. So we are going to condense the problem. We need a little bit of that in section 7.5, where we originally picked up the properties of logs. So, since it's adding, you're going to multiply the 2 parts. 3x times 2x leaves you 6x squared. So now you've got 1 log. Since you had 1 log, now we can do a rewrite. Natural log of the base of e. There's your y component. There's your x component. E to the 9th power equals 6x squared. Any problems before we continue with the problem? Anything not clicking? let's keep it moving. So e to the ninth power is A103.084. So 6 we can take care of. Divide it. So 1350.614. And then take the square root of both sides. So that gives you x equals plus or minus 36.751. Do not be so thirsty to draw a box around that answer, because one of those doesn't work. One of those doesn't work because one of those can't work. One of these two answers doesn't work because one of them can't work. So you cannot take a log or natural log of a negative number. Can't take a log or a natural log of a negative number. We couldn't at the start, we can't now. Just because they're natural doesn't mean you can go ahead and break that rule. So negative 36.751 is out. Your only answer is 36.751. So yes, you still have to do that little bit of element of checking your answers to make sure that those that are valid stay and those that are not valid go. If they're valid, they stay. If they're not valid, they go. Any questions, 5 or 6? So again, degree of difficulty isn't that much more. You're just using the same properties that went with regular logs. We're just using a lot of ln's and e's. Any questions by the wonderful studio audience before we start to close up shop? Go ahead. Okay. Yep, I see what I did. Because I did a 6 and not a 0. Thank you very much. So let's clean up these numbers real quick. I could have jumped in sooner than that, Christian. I'm up here all the way completely off. So this is 1350.514. Zero to the base. Take the square root of x. 36,749. Now, for those of you who are out there thinking, oh, well, you was only off by 2 numbers. Well, look at it this way. if your boss gives you your paycheck and they're off by 2 numbers, are you going to complain or let it slide? If your first thought is you're going to complain, then there's not much more that you can say at that point. So yeah, thank you so much for catching my mistake. Any other questions before we close up shop? All right, so someone's here.